Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you cruise a little smarter. And we are going to turn our sights on a different cruise line today. And to help me do that, I'd like to welcome back to the show all the way in Philadelphia, or in the Philadelphia area. Being an Eagles fan, how are you doing today, Adam?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me back. Different experience.
Different experience. This time cruising on Norwegian cruise lines. You guys have, let's just get a little quick background. It's been a while since you've been on. We sailed together on the Wish this past summer, which was a lot of fun to connect with you and your family. But for our listeners who haven't heard you for a while, kind of give a rundown of the different cruise lines you've actually been on before.
I've been cruising my whole life pretty much since I was on the Carnival Mardi Gras back in the day, back in the 80s. That was my first one. But I've been cruising on all the lines, Royal, Disney, Norwegian. And this was our third Norwegian cruise. We haven't been on one in a while. Last one we did was Pride of America in Hawaii about 7-8 years ago. Yeah, so we've pretty much sampled them all.
So we'll just jump into this one, I guess. What made you decide to book this one out of New York, other than the fact that it was an easy drive, rather than having to do that flight down to Florida, which is like, as we were talking about, airline prices have gotten to be pretty expensive lately.
Yes. So my parents offered to watch our son for a week and said, you guys can go anywhere you want. And we were looking around at different things to do, and the cruise out of New York, neither of us have really been up to New England. I never been to New England and Canada, so it was a good sample of that, and it was pretty cheap, comparatively speaking, to other cruise lines. So we hopped on it, and just easy in and out.
This one's out of New York, like you said, 7 nights up to New England on the Norwegian Breakaway.
Norwegian Breakaway, yeah.
And for everybody that does not know Norwegian, which is probably a lot of our listeners, what class of ship or what ship would the Breakaway be similar to when you're looking at Disney?
So it would be similar to the Fantasy. It's a little bit small, a little bit bigger, but that was the ship built after the Fantasy. So it was Dream at Meyer Werft. It was Dream, Fantasy, and then the Breakaway. And actually, there's a documentary on the Smithsonian Channel about building the ship. And while they're building it, you can see the Fantasy in the yard next to it. And you also can see some, the materials Meyer Werft. You can see the decking is the same as on the Disney boat and whatnot. So I would say it's very similar to the Fantasy size-wise.
Yeah, I think basically since the Dream class ship was built, all of these ships from Meyer Werft are very similar. They've got some different nuances, like the Disney ship has the front end of the ship, and the bow of the ship looks very different compared to Norwegian ships. But for the most part, the main part of the body is very similar. The 2 isopods to get it going, 4 different motors or engines down below. So very similar ships all the way up to even the Wish right now.
Yeah, and this ship had only 2 elevator banks, but this worked. Where I know on the Wish, there's been discussions about how that's created some havoc with passenger flow, but this seemed to work. We did never notice issues with that. And this was a much older crowd. The average age was 62. I think I told you it was crazy. We were one of the youngest people. We counted 10 children under the age that we would consider kids on the whole boat. Now, this was a cool weather cruise right after school started. So it makes sense. So you had a lot more people using elevators because of, the age of people, and never had a problem. And when we were on the Wish, I remember we were all 2 elevator banks. This flow was all messed up. So it was interesting.
That and the buttons too, causing people wait. Everybody's hitting.
That is true.
You want to go to floor 7 and you end up hitting all, every floor in between. So you got to do the local route to get to floor 7 or deck 7. Good point there. It's funny to me because this is one of the cruises that we've always wanted to do is go up to New England. Disney's tried it in the past. They all went all the way up to Quebec City, and those sailings just did not sell out. And now for the last, if you're not talking about the COVID years, but they basically are just running 1 sailing a year up to New England. And the one they're doing this year, and we actually booked the one for next year, it only has 1 stop. So
yeah, they were in Bar Harbor yesterday with the Breakaway, and then they were in St. John's with the Breakaway. They were kind of following it. I know they're not doing a 7-night cruise, but yeah, there's not a lot of options.
Yeah, unfortunately, because I think this is a cool, well, no pun intended, a cool itinerary for a lot of people because it just goes to some iconic places, and especially this time of year. So this one was a 7-night cruise. You guys are supposed to go to Newport, Portland, Maine, Bar Harbor, St. John's, Newfoundland, and then what was the last one?
Halifax.
Halifax.
We got hurricane canceled on there, and we're rerouted to Boston.
Because you wanted to see Tom Brady play, but then you forgot that he was playing for the Bucs.
Tampa.
Yeah. Just kidding. All right. Let's kind of jump into just talking about Norwegian a little bit different product. There's things that you can book ahead of time that Disney, you don't, well, I guess it's kind of similar with adult dining and stuff with Disney, but what are some of the things that you were able to book ahead of time, Adam?
So it's a lot more in depth, the book ahead of time part, because there's so many specialty restaurants. Let's just give a 10,000 foot view of Norwegian. They have 3 main dining rooms that are anytime dining. And then you can also make a reservation or you can walk up and wait. One is a very large dining room and there's 2 smaller ones. And then they have about 7 specialty restaurants that are charged. And then they have about 2 or 3 less than specialty restaurants that are free. There's a noodle bar off the casino. And then there was like a pub bar that had some included food. And obviously the buffets are on 24/7. But if you want a certain reservation at a certain time for these specialty restaurants and you're doing a cool weather cruise, because that's one thing this boat had, they call it like the ocean view, or there's a whole deck that all these restaurants are on and they all have outside seating. So when you're down in the Caribbean, the space of the restaurant almost doubles in size. There's like 4 of them. Up north, when it's 50 degrees at night, you're not eating dinner outside. So the space is limited. So we had to make reservations prior. And by the time I clicked to do it, the times were already tight. And I started about 30 days, 45 days prior to the boat. So if you really want to eat at 6:30 and you really want to eat at the steakhouse or whatever, you should get on as soon as you can. But that's for everything, I guess, if you really, really want to do something. So.
Okay. So dining, what about, I'll just throw this out there too, because it says it's anytime dining, but to your point, if you want to eat at 6:30 every day, and it's probably like in a cold weather cruise like this with older people, there's probably a lot of people demanding for that time. You're probably not going to walk up and get and be able to eat at 6:30. So you can make reservations ahead of time, even for the main restaurants too. So,
and also a little quirk on Norwegian site. If you make a reservation and then you want to change the time or change something, you can't cancel it. You have to call them and then they will cancel it. For whatever reason, I don't know whether it's if you had, say, prepaid already, and they don't want to give you a refund and they want you to jump through a hoop. I don't know why they do that, but I made a reservation one night and then I was like, oh crap, I messed up. I made it the wrong night. And I had to call them to fix it. And the travel agent can even do that. They're like, you have to call. I was like, okay, that's a waste of time. But there's something to think about when you're doing that.
So we'll go through the restaurants you guys ate at here once we get on the ship. But what about entertainment? I remember that we booked it was a really cool dinner with Cirque du Soleil kind of theming. And that was an additional charge, but that was a really cool dinner that we did when we did the getaway over in the Baltic. With the stage shows, with a dinner theater like that, was there things like that to book? Did you book anything? There
was that experience. It was like $25 extra for dinner and a show type thing. We did not. They had 2 Broadway style shows. One was 6. It's the Henry VIII Wives play that's over in London, or musical. We did not experience any of the shows. You had to pre-get your tickets. The theaters were a lot smaller than Disney, a lot smaller. And it was one of those things where if people didn't show, you could walk in, but you had to have everything pre-booked. Same thing, there was a comedian, a comedian used to be on Saturday Night Live 20 years ago. He was on the boat and we had to go into they have these wall kiosks you can go into, you scan your card and you can pick things to do. And so you had to even get tickets for that. So it was a lot of planning if you wanted to. And we're not really cruise planners into that. So we kind of just went with the flow, but there were a lot of options for shows and stuff like that.
Okay, one last question then. I mean, you guys are going as a couple without a kids, and so we're not going to talk about any of the kids club stuff. I'm sorry that we're not going to cover that, but we're just not going to cover the kids stuff. And I totally get the fact that hey, let's just go for a week and do what we want to do rather than feel like you have to have everything planned. You're going to Disney this weekend, and so I'm sure your life is already planned for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, they did. I know they do have kids clubs. Like I said, the cruise only had like 8 kids on it, so I didn't see any activities going on. They had a splash pad, they had water slides, they had outdoor stuff. So they did have a ton of stuff for families and kids if you would want to take a kid on this boat.
Okay, and last question, port adventures. With Disney's website, you can kind of go through and they've, depending on what the port, they got all different kinds of things that you can do as a family, family type things, individual, more adventurous things. Did you take a look at any of the port adventures you could book through NCL?
Yeah, we did. There was a lot less than I thought there would be, considering how many cruises they run up there. We did pre-book one because they give you included in your cruise fare, there's perks that you pick and get. We'll get into that in a second. But one of them was they gave you some money off a cruise, a shore excursion through them. So we pre-booked one. And again, anything you pre-book on this boat, you pay for right there. They don't put it on your account and settle up at the end. So you book an excursion early, you're paying for it there. So it's something just to keep in mind.
Okay, let's talk about pricing then. So with Norwegian, a lot of times they depended upon different specials and offers that they have. They'll include drink packages, potential, 1 or 2 nights in a specialty restaurant over a 7-night sailing. What did you guys get?
So this cruise offered their premium drink package, which was any alcoholic only drink up to $15, which covered 90% of the drinks out there, even wines. The drink prices were very reasonable on the ship compared to other cruise ships. They gave you 150 minutes of basic internet per person in the room. And then you got $50 off one shore excursion. And I'm blanking on the last one. I know there was a last one, but I'm blanking on it right now.
You said internet?
I did say internet, drinks. Oh, two specialty restaurants.
There we go.
Yep, 2 specialty restaurants.
We threw that out there already.
Yep, 2 specialty restaurants. And then you also, just like Royal does, and I'm sure all the other lines except Disney, they're always sending emails like, you can buy 2 more restaurants at 50% off. And we actually did. So we went in with 4 specialty restaurants.
The other thing that I got a kick out of, and it's been a while since I've had a Norwegian, we're going to sail with them in May up to Alaska. But I know the other cruise lines will do this where as it gets closer, it's like, hey, do you want to upgrade? If you want to upgrade, you can put in and say we'd like a suite and we'll pay an extra $5, which probably you're not going to get it for that. But if you offered them, $500, you might get it, so did you do anything like that?
They did do that. And I did the minimum, which was like $500 a person to get in the class, just because, again, it didn't really matter for us, but that was the only part of the boat that was sold out. Actually, the Haven area. The rest of the boat was not as full room wise. It was about 75% booked. But so I did put in some bids and I did the lowest bid. I knew I wasn't going to get it, but I just was like, oh, I'll try it.
So let's just talk about the Haven real quick. I don't have it out in front of me, but basically the Haven is like a cruise ship within a cruise ship. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of similar to Disney's Concierge, but I think it comes with a lot more perks than what you get on Disney as far as, I think you get a butler. They have their own restaurant up there. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, they do. So we did hang out with a couple up there and they did have their own restaurant. But the downside of that, they told us the restaurant menu was the same every day. So it wasn't like, is that not true? That's what they told us. I don't know.
Sorry, I was shaking my head that's not good.
Oh, yeah, that's what they said. Because I'm like, oh, did you guys just eat up there? And they're like, well, it's the same menu. So we do, but not every meal. I was like, okay, well, then that kind of lowered the value proposition for me because we had a similar experience on Royal in their suite class. And they had a restaurant, but it was like way awesome food, different every night. So I was a little surprised by that, but it definitely seemed nice, a little better suite action than Disney does, and a little more affordable.
Yeah, I would love to try the Haven class or whatever Royal's called. I can't remember what Royal's called.
Suite class, I think they call it suite class. Yeah,
yeah. At some point, it's kind of nice having that, just a different space. I know they've got especially down in the Caribbean, they've got their own pool out there and everything like that. So you're not, fighting the crowds with the riffraff like me.
Yes, right? With the regular Joes.
The regular Joes. All right, let's turn to this cruise. Going up to New England, besides being away from the kids or your son and having some free time with your beautiful wife, what were you excited about doing on this New England cruise?
I've never been to any of these places. So I was just excited to see them, get out there, eat lobster rolls, just kind of walk around and hang out. There wasn't any specific, we need to do this, this, and this. We managed our days basically off visiting restaurants and trying food and different drinks and walking around and just being outside and enjoying the weather.
For our listeners that are not from the Northeast, one of the big things to go up to New England is the fall change of colors. You guys went here, beginning of September?
September.
That's a little bit early, so you're probably not seeing too much foliage changing up there.
Yeah, there was some areas when as further you get north, like in Canada, there was some, yellow started to go, but yeah, it wasn't that. The leaves weren't falling. Like I saw pictures of people up there last week and they're all falling and turning red now. But we were like the last that we left, it was 82 degrees in New York and it did not break 65 the rest of the time that we were there. And a lot of days were in the 50s. So even in September, so you have to be very mindful of whether you are going on a cold weather cruise. It was very comparable to Alaska in the summer. So just have that mindset. There was no pool days.
Okay, yeah, I think we're going to talk about that. Well, especially because you guys kind of got hit by the hurricane, the thing coming up. So unfortunately, I think that caused some problems with the weather up there for you guys too. All right, let's talk about this cruise. Sailing out of New York, kind of an iconic sail away. Any issues? It was Norwegian pretty easy to get on board?
Yeah, it was super easy. Now this cruise, they said it was because of Canada. We did have to do the COVID test 2 days prior and show them, and I literally could have wrote a note saying no COVID and with a check mark and showed it to the lady. And I'm pretty sure she would have taken it because she just didn't even look at the thing. But, we got to the port, parked. Parking is a little expensive. It was $40 a day to park right up at the port there. And by the time we parked the car, we were on the boat within 20 minutes. The longest line was security. And then they give you your ticket and you go right in and you're on the boat.
And this leads right off, like kind of mid Manhattan on the west side.
Right, yeah, right off the Lincoln Tunnel. Yeah, like literally right there. The aircraft carrier. Next time I go up there, I have to go up early so you can go see the aircraft carrier and the shuttles up there, and all the stuff is literally right next to where the cruise ships are.
And that's where the Magic is leaving this year, and next year the Dream will be leaving from there too as well. So, stepping on the Breakaway, what did you think of the Breakaway as a ship overall?
It was clean. It was clean looking, not like clean. Like it was clean, but it was very crisp looking. It was very modern. Reminded me almost like Bay Lake Tower is, like that kind of style. There wasn't any. It was a Peter Marks boat. I know he's an artist. I'm not 100% sure how famous he is or whatnot. I guess famous enough to have his artwork on a cruise ship, but his artwork was featured throughout the whole boat. So it was just I don't want to say sterile, but like kind of sterile. There wasn't a lot of theming in any of the areas. Obviously, like the Irish bar was themed Irish and stuff, but there wasn't what you're used to on a Disney boat where, everything is themed out the wazoo. This was very just basic, I guess you could say.
It always feels to be kind of like an upscale hotel.
Yeah.
Like an upscale Hilton, Hyatt, whatever, no shade whatsoever on it, but nice, elegant, but not like over the top theming wise or anything like that. So what kind of cabin did you guys book?
We had a club suite, it was called, which was not a suite. It was the same room on Disney as the extended veranda, then the smaller veranda. And I didn't really understand what you got with that, but I guess we got a bottle of champagne. 2 days we got cookies in our room, but then that was it. And then we got a bag of laundry. That was the only perks of that. You just have a bigger room. They have a lot of different classes of rooms that are kind of ridiculous, and I think they just changed the name and then they charge extra $100, and then I think that's kind of the game there. But it was just a basic veranda stateroom. It was really nice. Bathroom was big. Shower was great. It was a very nice sized room. I can't complain about it all at all.
I like the ones that are called like the spa ones, just because they're next to the spa, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. We remember walking. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
So anything stand out about the room at all?
The shower was awesome. It had like 5 different jets, and it was very big. So you can tell, like, compared to Royal, the bathroom was so tiny. In the shower, you're in this little stall. This was huge. So again, I don't know if it was just the class of room. I don't think so. I feel like it was a relatively standard thing, but you can see how they've expanded these bathrooms since 2010 when these boats were all being built, and it had a lot of storage and stuff. It was a great room. It was just a basic good room.
How about trying to figure out what to do on the ship? There's people used to love the paper navigators. Disney's, gone to the app. So I know Norwegian has an app. And the one thing I will say is, as much shade as Disney gets on their tech sometimes, I remember that, and I've heard this recently from other people, that like the messaging on Norwegian is kind of spotty as far as using the app. How did you find out what you were going to do, or when you were going to do it?
They gave us paper things in our room every night.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. I mean, it was awesome having that. And it's funny when we were just on the Disney boat, and where Disney's trying to like cut back and save paper and save this, but they do other ridiculous things that just is so wasteful. And it's like, on the Disney Wish, they don't have club soda and a soda gun. They give you a bottle every time you want to drink of club soda. And it's like, well, how much glass are you throwing away? But you won't give me this paper, navigator of 3 pages. It was very awesome to have that. It's weird. It's like, oh my God, I missed this. So that's how you figured out what we were going to do every day. And again, since it was such a port intensive cruise, most of the stuff didn't even start till 6+ o'clock. So there wasn't much going on during the day.
Did you try the app at all?
We tried it for just having, like, it had our dinner reservations in there and what specialty restaurants we were eating, and we did look at it, but we didn't have anyone else to communicate with except the 2 of us, so we didn't use it really. And you could still iMessage through the internet even if you weren't signed into the internet for the pay package.
And for people that are big into the internet, how did the internet work on NCL?
Yeah, so you log in. It was kind of almost like the Disney one where you press start. They do have 3 different levels, and it can get pretty pricey if you need like streaming and like FaceTime and stuff. We had the basic internet that it came with, 150 minutes, and it was fine for checking scores or shooting an email or sending a picture, and it worked all the time. It was a little wonky signing in and out, but once you figured it out, it was fine.
I can't remember who I just heard this from recently, where they said it was pretty spotty as far as like the messaging services. But I think for most part now, most of the cruise lines, have gone to the point where you can iMessage.
Yeah, which is nice. They allow you to do that. So
right.
It's definitely a bonus.
Right, which works generally pretty good. So let's turn to the dining. Let's turn to the restaurants. Just overall thoughts on the buffet. It's a little bit different than Disney's.
Yeah, it was okay. The buffet was kind of the same. I mean, they didn't have any of like the super premium foods like the crab legs and stuff like that, but it was fine. I mean, we had a couple meals up there, mainly breakfast. We didn't eat up there too often because, again, you're out, like where you would eat at lunch every day you're out. So, but the times we ate up there, it was okay. It was nothing to, that I got to eat there again, or nothing to say that was disgusting. So
yeah, I've eaten breakfast there, to be completely honest. So
yeah, it's really, it was just breakfast and whatnot. So
how about the specialty restaurants?
All right. This is like the Wild West.
Okay. Yeah. I'll say this. We enjoyed the noodle bar, which is included.
The best one. That's the best one on board.
Yeah. The noodle bar was really good. We never ate the wings and stuff at the Irish bar. So
neither did we. Yep.
We skipped that, but we really enjoyed Cagney's. And then we also went to the teppanyaki place. So we liked those 2 places. Where'd you guys end up going?
So we did teppanyaki, and that was quite the show. Awesome. Recommend that. I would even pay the $50 cover charge for that. Then we did the Italian restaurant, we did the seafood restaurant, and we did the Brazilian steakhouse style restaurant. So those were the 4. And then they also had a sushi bar. They had a Cagney's, which is their signature steakhouse. And they had a French restaurant.
Le Bistro.
Yes. So those are the ones we chose. Now, the whole way they do this now is bonkers to me. It's like, it's all a la carte. It's like you're going to a regular restaurant. And when you buy the dining package, if you go to an a la carte restaurant, you get an appetizer, a salad, an entree, and a dessert. Doesn't matter what the cost is. You get to pick that. If you want anything extra, you pay for it. Teppanyaki is a flat fee, so it just covers your flat fee, $50. That's your flat fee. Same thing with the Brazilian steakhouse flat fee. Now, if you were buying a la carte in some of these menus, you're spending $60 to $60+ a person if you do an appetizer, a dessert, and an entree. It's bonkers. And the French restaurant, or not, the Italian restaurant, and was like Olive Garden. I mean, it was not good. And if you paid, like our bill was $120, and again, it was covered by the package. But if I would have puked on, I would have like been so upset if I had to pay that money for the food they gave you there. The one thing about the food on this boat is it was hit or miss every single meal, every single experience. Some were amazing and some were not great. And you're just basically playing like a food minefield.
How was the Brazilian steakhouse?
It was okay. I would not go back. If you're super into meat, Like it's just meat. I mean, I know what the whole experience is. They have the salad bar and then the meat, but it is literally just like, and it's not even good, like great meat. It's okay meat, but it's not, where you can just see on these boats since COVID where they are cutting back, and they are cutting back on food. They just are. And you could tell that by the stuff they were bringing out in that place. So
how about the seafood place? Because
seafood place was about
seafood.
Yeah, the seafood place was good. They had like they had other stuff on the menu, but they had 7 fish to choose from, and they grilled them or blackened them, and then you had some sauces to choose from. So you got a piece of fish on a plate with some sides and some good appetizers. Now they had up charges, like if you wanted a lobster tail, it was an extra $20, or a premium crab cake was an extra something. The seafood place and teppanyaki were by far the two of the specialty restaurants I would go back to. I would not go back to the Italian place or to the Brazilian steakhouse.
Yeah, I was going to throw that out there. I mean, I've only been in 2 Norwegians, but I would not use your credit for the Italian place because
there's that or the French one. And my wife just is not a big fan of French food. And I was like, all right, we'll just go to the Italian one. So it's just the side note, funny thing. So I was on a Norwegian boat in 2008, 2009, out of New York to Bermuda. And it was when the specialty restaurants just started getting going. And they had their cover charge in the Italian restaurant at that time was $6 a person. And because I remember my parents, we were on there for they were getting their vows renewed. And so there was like 30 people. And my dad just paid for everyone to go into the specialty restaurant. And I was just thinking to myself, now that would cost, $5,000, thousands of dollars to do that. So it's just crazy where they started with these specialty upcharges to what it's turned into.
Oh, definitely. So I think if nobody knows what teppanyaki is, that's kind of like where they cook the food in front of you. They've got kind of like Benihana, where they cut up the meats and stuff like that. They cook it all in front of you. That was really good. I would give a thumbs up on Cagney's. We enjoyed La Bistro, which we were surprised on. Bang for your buck. I think I would stick with Cagney's teppanyaki. And if you like fish, it sounds like the fish place.
Yeah, the fish place was good. Yeah, absolutely.
And the noodle place as well too. That was really good.
The main dining room was okay. They had some good things on the menu. We had 2 lunches there, and we had 1 dinner and a breakfast, and it was okay. I mean, nothing that I'm going to say was amazing. The choices were meh, but it was okay.
How about service? Disney's kind of known for service, but for all of us who've been on other cruise lines before, you get some really good service on the other cruise lines as well. What was service like for you guys?
We had no complaints. Everyone worked real hard. This boat, it was really weird, like nationality wise. There were, I'm not even kidding, I feel like 70% of the service crew was from like Philippines, Indonesia type place. Like I only talked to 2 Eastern European people, both from Croatia. There was not a lot of island people. It was just like all were from this one general area. I don't know if that was a coincidence or Norwegian heavily recruits there, but we had great service. There was nothing to complain. And it was kind of nice. I mean, I do miss getting to know your server on that whole deal and the experience you have, especially. I do like that on Disney, but you also don't get hounded by the head waiter, and you don't trying to make sure he gets his $7 that, you're going to give him and stuff like that. So there was some of that was refreshing, so I see pros and cons to both, but we have no complaints. Service was great.
So let's turn to entertainment before we go into the ports. One of the things that you talked about there as far as the restaurants, I can't remember what they call that district, but everything's kind of like similar to the Wish in some ways, where it's kind of centrally located in the middle part of the ship. And there's kind of like the promenade where you can go out, and there's bar space and restaurant space that's outside and inside. So when you're in the Caribbean, it really makes good use of that space, and it's fun to eat outside and whatnot like that. And I think that's a huge miss on the Wish. They got a giant space there on deck 4 that is basically useless, other than you just want to go wander around in circles out there. And no shade on the Wish, but man, if they would have opened that up to like either a couple of bars or stuff like that for while it's done in the Caribbean, like it's going to be, I think that would be a great space as well. So let's kind of turn to entertainment. All that entertainment is kind of like in the middle space. You've got generally comedians. They've got a piano bar, I'm sure. Then different like dance parties at night. You guys are probably pretty busy in the ports and probably not raging until midnight or whatnot. But what did you guys do? Not raging,
no. We did. So they had like a really, really cool like rock bar. They had a name. I can't think of it. I know it was modeled off some rock bar in New York, but like they had a Fleetwood Mac night there, and they did the Rumors album, and those were really good. And it was packed. I mean, again, the crowd. Yeah, they had the piano bar. They had the sports bar. They had the casino was huge. I've never seen a casino so big on a cruise ship before, ever. Both it was gigantic. So a lot of space was wasted on. You can say wasted or not wasted, depending on how you feel about casinos. A lot of space was taken up by the casino. They had the Howl in the Moon type bar, the dueling pianos, the comedy cellar type thing. Yeah, it was all there. It was easy to figure out when they had good acts. They had the ice bar where you had to bundle up, which was fun. You pay like a $10 cover or something, and you get a drink in there. It's these specific drinks. They're served in an ice cup. It's freezing. They bundle you up, put a hat on and stuff. And it's cool. We go in, take some pictures, swallow the drink. You last about 10, 15 minutes in there. I made the mistake of having shorts on, which, I regretted about 3 minutes after being inside there. But so make sure you wear pants. But it was definitely really cool.
So the Fleetwood Mac, the Rock Bar and everything like that, were you able to watch that and see it, or was it hard to get a seat?
We didn't get a seat, but we went in a little late, and yeah, it was that you could get in, you could listen. They weren't like you couldn't get a seat or anything, but it was cool. No, you had to get early to get like a good seat, but they definitely were cool about it and let people stand around the back and everything. And they did like another classic, they had like a Led Zeppelin night. So this band, like they're almost like a tribute band they had on. So they definitely had a lot better paid acts. Like I said, the comedian was on SNL and from like 2000 to 2003 or something. There was I feel like a lot better acts, where Disney has the IP and the Broadway style shows. These other cruise lines don't have that kind of stuff. So they're paying for different acts and instead of coming up with their own stuff. So you can see where they put the money into the acts.
I would love it if they had something like that. And that's one of the things I'm kind of looking forward to when we cruise with Norwegian again, potentially, or something else, because, the idea of being able to go watch a kind of a rock band for the night without the kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that stuff. We started going back to concerts just recently. We got Springsteen's tickets coming up later this year. I mean, it's fun to see a good live band in concert. And if you could do that on a cruise, I think that adds to the value and entertainment.
Absolutely. No, it definitely, and they had a guy doing Eagles one night, and it definitely had more of that. It's kind of the thing we said about the Wish, where like, you have music here, or like, stop there, and they didn't really have any of that. Like, they had some of it, but there could definitely been more of that going on, and made it feel more of like a whole scene than just, whatnot. So anyway.
So somebody told me that they're doing, never mind. They were just talking about music like they normally do as you're going to dinner. They usually have like a group there. And I don't think that they really had that while we were on board.
No, they did not.
They just had, what's the name of the bar? I can't say it right now. The champagne bar.
Yeah, it was the piano. Next, it was like a Cinderella style bar.
Yeah. Is it the Rose? No,
yeah,
the Rose,
no, that's
the
upstairs.
Rose, yeah, that's up by Palo and Enchante. But all right, I digress. All right, anything else about the ship that we haven't talked about, Adam, that you can think of to touch on?
They again, we didn't really get to experience a lot of the outside stuff because it was cold, but they had a bunch of hot tubs. They had the pools. They had all the standard stuff that you want. They had like an activity. They had this like rope thing where you like fly around, kind of like zip lining obstacle course. That seemed pretty cool if you were into that sort of thing. That's like their gimmick on this boat, I guess, is, they had a bunch of water slides. Again, you get to experience any of that. So they had a lot of water, a lot of bars, a lot of stuff going on outside too. And I guess if it was a warm water cruise, that would have been a lot more hopping at night too. So
they had that ropes course on the Getaway, and so we did that one. It's kind of cool.
I think the Getaway and the Breakaway are the same exact ships.
Yeah, the Breakaway was the Breakaway
design wise. Yeah,
the Getaway was like built right after the Breakaway, I guess. So, all right, let's turn to the ports themselves. Then you guys start off in Newport, Rhode Island. What'd you guys end up doing there?
All right, so it's a port, tender port, and the tenders were really efficient. You do have to like book a tender ticket if you want to be like off first, but they just called everybody. It wasn't like you really had to wait. So it was about a 10-minute boat ride in, and we actually had family friends that moved up there and retired up there. So we spent the day with them. They took us all around. But the little town there is a bunch of great restaurants, shopping, but they're known for like their mansions, and there's like a Salve Regina's there, and just the whole sailing culture. It's a great little town. I loved it. I would definitely drive back if we ever did it and stay there again. We had a great time.
So from there, you guys go up to Portland, Maine, the other Portland.
Portland, Portland, the no Steve Portland.
Yeah, the no Steve Portland. What'd you guys have planned there?
That was we got there a little later. We got in 11, and then that was a dock, and there was a celebrity boat there too. So the town was a little more busy than usual. I just started scouring before we left for like lobster roll places, and I heard that if you get inland more off the port, there's better options and a little more affordable because they're not gouging you right there. So we walked into town and we, went to this little restaurant, got some lobster rolls and some drinks. And then we shopped and walked around. The weather was overcast and chilly, and just kind of, went to different shops and different bars and just kind of walked around the town.
So Newport in Portland, Maine, does it feel industrial, or like, is it got that quintessential kind of New England small town feel as you're kind of wandering?
Newport, definitely quintessential small town, summer town. Like, I know people live there all year round, but not crazy. Like it's not crazy like a Jersey Shore town where it's like only really busy in the summer, but that's more New England. Newport or Portland was more like a little small city, kind of like Juneau. Reminded me a lot of Juneau.
Okay.
Same kind of like, maybe the tallest building was 15 stories and there was like 2 of them. That reminded me a lot of Juneau and different other smaller cities. Nothing like really on the Northeast, like around where I live, but something like that. So yeah, very hip. Portland was a lot more like, the bars and the people, you could tell they were all just a little more, like a hip town.
More hip town than Newport.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yes.
more old money
Yeah.
in Newport with their sailboats and everything like that. So, okay, from there you go up to Bar Harbor, Maine.
Bar Harbor, yep.
Yeah.
That was a tender, nice, beautiful ride into that town. And then, they have like a main street, pretty long main street, tons of little knickknack shops, restaurants, bars, ice cream. They're known for like blueberry stuff. My wife got blueberry ice cream, stuff like that to try. We ended up just kind of, Acadia National Park's there. They did have some tours, but they all were like driving tours. So if you wanted to like hike, depending on your cruise ship's tours, you have to pretty much get an Uber and get to the park yourself and then get back somehow. We weren't trusting that because of the times that we were there, and God forbid you can't get an Uber and you're stuck there. So something I'm sure you can pay people to pre-book Acadia stuff and just meet someone once you get off the boat. We ended up just walking this path right from the main drag, and it was about a mile or 2 on the coast, right up around the town, and it was really nice. We had a great day. The weather was beautiful, 60 degrees, sunny. It was a cool place. I'd go back there too and stay right there. It was really nice.
I haven't been up to New England like that, but it kind of reminds me of like Victoria out here where, kind of a small little, seaport town where it's just beautiful to walk along the coast there and take in the ships and maybe some of the sailboats are going along and everything else.
Now that's another, it's kind of like an Alaska town where the people were telling us that come October, they close and they open back up in March, April, depending on the weather. Like even like the main hotel, like that has beautiful views of the water. You can't book a room there in January. So they close them. So that town like shuts down in the winter. So
that's amazing that, it goes down to that level. So
yeah,
let's head up to Canada then. This is the port that the Dream is stopping at next year that we booked, St. John's up in Newfoundland. What did you think of St. John's?
All right. So this is where it gets interesting for us. So we did our shore excursion through Norwegian there. And this was like the Bay of Fundy. So the whole thing up there is their tides are crazy, like literally like, 30 feet, 40 feet tides. So we booked this tour, and it was saying that we were going to go to this town called St. Martin's, and then we're going to go see like a fishing village, and then we're going to go to have food provided and basically see all this stuff off the Bay of Fundy and into the, wilderness of Canada. And it was an all-day tour. It said 7 hours, but 5 hours of this tour were in a bus, and it was terrible. I mean, it was just, we were trapped. It was damp. So they come up and they're like, we go to this place for lunch. Your choice was chicken fingers or fish stew. And I'm just like, where are we? Like this description Norwegian provided was not even close to what this tour was. And the lady even said, because someone started complaining, like, I thought we were going to get to hike and do this. And she's like, no, Norwegian exaggerates this tour. She flat out just said it. Norwegian exaggerates what this tour was. And I was like, so the lady was, the people handling the tour did their job. Everything was fine by that. They did what they were supposed to do. There wasn't anything like that. It just was not what was sold. If I knew we were going to be in a bus for 5 of the 7 hours, the one day we were in Canada, like, I never would have done that. The town that they visited was like an hour away. Did not know that. Again, I trusted Norwegian to tell the truth. So, life lesson, you book a shore excursion, research it. If you book one through the cruise, and if you're not sure, go talk to them. Because when I went and complained, we ended up getting 25% back because it was like a $200 tour per person. They had the description. He read it to me. And I'm like, that's the tour, but that's not what's on your website. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'll make a note. Maybe we'll update it. I'm like, it was a little kind of shocking. So our experience in St. John's was a little skewed because of the tour. And the weather deteriorated immensely. It rained all afternoon. But I did make it to a Tim Hortons first time. It was delicious. But again, it could have just been, in my head that it was good. But we had fun.
Well, after your chicken fingers and fish stew,
exactly.
It's going to taste good, right?
Yeah, I'm like, give me that crawler. So we definitely enjoyed Tim Hortons. So,
the one thing I wish that they had is, when you look at these tours, because even with Disney's, let's be honest, some of them are great and some of them are kind of like, I don't know if I'd do that again. And there's no way to get any feedback, really. I wish there was a way where people could give feedback on the tours, because you could look at it and go, hey, you know what? I really want to be on a bus for 5 hours and just look at the leaves. Because there's some people that really want to do that. But, you and your wife, you want to be out a little bit more active and everything else. And so you could go back and look at it and go, oh, yeah, that tour's not going to be for us. So, first of all, I know they misrepresented it. I know that's a whole nother part of it. But I wish there was a way that people could give feedback on these sites, because you don't really. A lot of times you're just kind of like rolling the dice and like, I hope this works out. I hope this is fun. We're spending a lot of money to go to Canada, and now it's. And they're not cheap.
Like it was $400 for the two of us, and it's like chicken fingers and stew. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you should have that in there. Like, these are your choices. Good luck.
Was the town nice at least when you got there?
It was just like kind of like Juneau. It was just like a small little city. It wasn't. It was industrial. There's can't remember the name, but there's like one family that employs 70% of this province through like oil refineries, paper mills, gas stations. It's like this name everywhere. It was nice. I would love to have done something else, walk around the town some more, experience the different. We had bad luck, and that is what it is. That's what happens when you get one spot, one chance.
You're not selling this cruise that we signed up for. We're going to have to take
a don't do that tour.
That's our one spot in St. John's.
Yeah, don't do that tour. I'll read the description, and if I see the word, no, it was cool. Like in that St. Martin, we got there, and the fishing boats were all floating, and then we drove back 4 hours later. They were all on the ground.
Yeah.
So like some of it was cool to see, but I just wish it was described properly and better. So,
gotcha. Okay, from there, you guys were, and I forgot where, but you ended up in Boston.
Yeah, we're supposed to go to Halifax. There was a hurricane that shot up Bermuda and hit Halifax as a Category 1. Actually, it was their worst for her strongest hurricane that ever hit Halifax ever.
But before you touch on that, how was the seas overall? Just sailing up and down.
So I was nervous about that, but the boat handled them perfectly. There were some days where we were banging 10 to 15 foot seas, and the boat handled them better than any boat I've been on. Because when it gets bad like that, I can get seasick, but I did not have a problem at all.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, so it definitely did well with it. So yeah, overall, I was nervous about that, but it did well.
Okay, so on to Boston. I'm sure you've been to Boston before.
Yeah, a long time ago. Again, they basically just were like, we're going to Boston the day before. Like, it wasn't any planning. There were no tours to do. If you're not familiar with Boston, you go in right across from the airport, and you're kind of in a specific little porty area. You're not near anything important. So if you wanted to go see something of significance, you need an Uber or a tour. It's right next to the Harpoon Brewery. So if you're into beer, you can just go right across the street and have a good time there. We walked about a mile into some stores and then walked right back. But there was this, we had to go through customs because we left Canada and came back. So they did this whole dog and pony show where they like made us show our passports and then get off the boat. It was such a pain in the butt. It was just like, it wasn't even worth it. And most people didn't even get off. So it was what it is. It wasn't their fault. They did their best. It was fine. You really didn't get to experience Boston. We got there late. The boat was late because the one leaving couldn't leave because it didn't know where it was going. So we were circling the Boston Harbor outside for like 2 hours. And then we finally got in around 2. So it was just whatever. We were fine. You know, it is what it is.
Sounds like a day to go sit on. So you know what? When we first started flying to Boston way back in the day, our hotel was right down there. It's brand new. They built it, and there was nothing down there. There was like a lot of. There was the Harpoon Brewery, and then they've got like the stuff along the sea there. But there was like just tons of parking lots and everything else. Now it's all kind of infilled with like some pretty cool restaurants and breweries down there.
Yeah, they have a lot of fancy restaurants. They have some sort of concert pavilion there. I can see a lot of Bostonians going to dinner, like getting there, looking all nice and hip and going to their, their fancier restaurants. But yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it was just quick change of plans. But that's sailing through hurricane season. Look what happened to the people in the Wish from the Fantasy 2 weeks ago. Like these things are going to happen.
Exactly.
You're playing with fire.
Exactly. But kind of a cool area there. I didn't know. I didn't realize that that's where you guys pulled into. It's a nice area now. A little bit of a walk to get to if you want to go to Boston Commons, up to Faneuil Hall and all that type of stuff. Cheers. Go up there and get your touristy
and they run. I think
there.
Princess runs their Canada New England cruises out of Boston.
Okay.
So there are some boats home port there.
So this is a total side note. When you land on runway 4, I think 4 right, they have like these minimums. Like if the weather's bad, like normally you get down to like 200 feet, but if there's like ships in the harbor, then you only get down to 400 feet. And we're coming in one day, it was like clearing a million, and coming into land, and like the FO was flying. And so I'm like looking over because there was a ship, and man, like literally like as we came in, we're like, I was looking into the bridge, and the dude on the bridge was looking at me. Like that's how close you get to him.
Oh my God, that's wild.
It was pretty cool. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Anyways, all right, Boston. From there, you back to New York. Any problems getting off?
We had one day at sea.
Yeah, one day at sea.
But it was 50 degrees, windy. The storm really kicked the seas up that day. So we basically just stayed inside that day. We did go to the spa and had a massage. Prices were a little more expensive than Disney, which was surprising. It was the same stuff, the same stuff Disney has. Nothing different, just prices were different. But it was nice, great spa. We had a good time.
Do they have like a rainforest room or anything like that?
They do have something you can buy, but it was expensive. So we didn't even think about it.
So you guys spent a little bit of time in the casino. Overall, did you like it?
Yeah, we did. We walked around. My wife did hit like a $300 jackpot on $20, which was fun. And we left quickly because I know those cruise ship casinos are not friendly to longtime players. But yeah, no, it was cool. They do smoke in there. So that's something to be aware of when the casino was open. Now, the casino wasn't open that much because we were in port so much, but there is smoke. So if you're sensitive to that, just be aware. And their shopping on board too was like an F. Like their main store was being rehabbed and closed. You couldn't even buy a t-shirt if you wanted one. And I remember being on other cruises. They really got into the duty-free alcohol and cigarettes and stuff, but I was looking at the prices and they weren't even that impressive. So there wasn't even seem like, why would I lug this home for $5?
Somebody could probably disagree with me on this. I know airports vary from price to price, but I haven't seen good deals on duty free in years. So
no, it's not like it used to be. We used to roll out of those ships in college with like 5 bottles of Absolute for like $50. And, trying to put it in our pants to get out, or something, because we're only allowed to take 2 bottles out a person. But yeah, it was not impressive at all, deal wise.
All right. Well, so day at sea, back to New York. Any issues getting off? Was it pretty easy?
We did carry off ourselves because our car was there. We literally rolled off the boat at 7:30, and I was in my driveway at 9:30 in the morning. It was no traffic, right out early, gone. It was perfect. You couldn't. I mean, I was like, man, I'm so jealous of people in Florida right now that can do this off these cruise ships, because it was that was priceless to me. Just being home. We're done. The cruise is over. We're home.
Yeah,
So,
that would be nice. I mean, I'm just happy to get off. We're going to go down to San Diego and happy to get off and just fly back from San Diego here in a couple of days rather than making that trek across the country. So
yeah,
for people that have not sailed on Norwegian or thinking about doing a Canada, New England cruise, what kind of tips or advice would you give?
I definitely would recommend it. Just, kind of go in it with a grain of salt, especially if you're like a Disney cruiser. Just don't compare it. They're not the same. So don't have it in your head that that's all cruise lines are. For the price and what they offered, I would go back if I ever did that itinerary again. Apples to apples. If we were doing a 7-night Caribbean cruise, would I choose Norwegian over Disney? No, I would not, even if it was more expensive, especially with a family. Maybe if there was no kids, we could talk. But I would just say, just pre-plan your dinners, just be prepared, try to do your research on shore excursions, maybe plan that stuff out a little bit better as best you can, and just kind of go with the flow, because there's a lot less structure.
So I know there's a Royal Caribbean blog podcast. Norwegian doesn't get as much information, and same with some of the other ships, cruise lines like Celebrity and Virgin now. What is there any place that you go to get information, like to get information from NCL beforehand?
No, honestly, I was blind on this. And again, this is another psychology thing with this, which I know this is all ending, thankfully. But, because of this COVID test 2 days prior, I still haven't been able to, like, when I have to do this hangover on this trip, like, I still don't in my mind be like, normally we're planning, you're all into it. And I'm like, I'm not spending 5 hours planning if I can't go on this, if I can't go on this ship. So I know hopefully that is the last COVID test I have to take before a cruise. It definitely does. There's a little overhang on that. So, yeah, but I don't know if there's a Norwegian. I know, like, I did do some like YouTube just to see what the room looked like and stuff. So there are people that YouTube have it. You can Google, some different videos to see the ships. But as far as in depth of like Disney and Royal, no, I don't know of anyone.
I think the only other place that you could go to is go over to Cruise Radio. They've got a lot of different content there from different people that are talking about some of the different cruise lines and stuff like that. So maybe you could go and listen to one or two of those to kind of if you're going to sail with Norwegian for the first time, get kind of a general understanding of what that's going to be like.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's itinerary specific with them. Like, they had an itinerary would work for our schedule and was convenient to our place, and it was good. So it's fine. But when you're comparing all these cruise lines, it generally for us, it falls on the itinerary. And if there is a specific itinerary, and Disney is limited because they only have 4 or 5 ships, maybe 6 or 7 soon. So, trying to find these specific itineraries, it's tough. So you do have to branch out.
That's a good point. I mean, because actually I was just flying with the flight attendant the other day or yesterday, and she was planning for next June, and they're sailing out of Venice and I didn't even get the cruise line, but they're going to stop in Split and Dubrovnik, Croatia, which I would love to go back to Split. Split was amazing. Dubrovnik's awesome. And then they were going to go to Athens. They were going to Mykonos, Santorini, and then they had to stop in Turkey too. So, I mean, for my kind of cruising, I love that type of stuff. I love going to some different places. And unfortunately, I think Disney's doing a little bit better job, at least in Europe right now, as far as branching out and trying to stop at some different spots by adding on like the Greek cruises and then now going down to Australia, which I like to see that. But I mean, there's a lot of different other places in the world that I'd love to go to.
Yeah, I think the problem, like, overall with them too, is like we were originally talking about the Canadian thing, like, because they're so kid-centric that these off-school boutique cruises, they can't fill.
Right.
Because, again, compared to what they charge to the cruise lines that do it all the time, run these New England cruises and have their foot in the door. And then, who's going to take, again, take their kids out a week to go to Canada in September?
Right. Yeah. No, not too many people.
Maybe some homeschool people, but other than that, not a lot.
Right. All right. Well, as we kind of finish this up, a couple more questions. You guys are heading down to Walt Disney World. Have you been on to Guardians yet? I can't remember.
I did once, and that's it for me.
That's it. One and done.
One and done. My daughter loved it. I came off a little weird. So I can't handle these things as I get older anymore.
What are your highlights then for the weekend? What are some of the things you're looking forward to doing?
Food and wine. When we were there last time, it was way too hot to experience anything in July. So we're going to do some food and wine and just Hang out. My daughter's on fall break from college. She's got a couple days off, so that's why we're doing this. Just kind of get family back together and get away to a little warmer weather.
Any dining spots you guys are going to
Sanaa, we're going to hit Sanaa, and I think we're going to eat Mexico, the one inside, and the boardwalk Italian place. Trattoria al Forno. Yeah. So I'm trying to get. So we're surprising my son. He doesn't know we're going. We're going to pull him out early for school tomorrow and tell him we're going to the airport. So he's into Star Wars this week, which is good timing. So we're going to try to get into Oga's, the cantina, so he can see Rex.
That'll be cool. Andor, thumbs up, thumbs down?
Thumbs up. Thumbs up is a little slow, but I like that. It's different. And I also like that there's no, besides Andor and say Mon Mothma in the first few episodes, anyone could not make it to the next episode. And I do appreciate not having that protection. Like, in Obi-Wan, Darth Vader, we knew they weren't going to die, and we knew nothing was going to happen to them major. So this is cool that you're starting to see these, kind of like the show having some grit and having some, skin in the game. Yeah,
I love it. I love that. I like, action's fun, but I like when they put a little bit more thought into it and the story and everything else. So I'm really enjoying it. Okay. And then last question, next cruise, what do you guys got planned? Anything?
We are January, Pixar Day at Sea, on the Fantasy, the last week of January. So that's our next cruise booked. So, and we just got it a lot cheaper thanks to Disney Plus. I guess the slow cruising has benefited our financial. We've been making my son's cruise fare free.
Take advantage of it while you can. What? Eastern, Western? What is that?
It is the Eastern. So we were supposed to do this last year when we did the Star Wars Day at Sea, but because of COVID, they closed all those ports and they sent us to Mexico. So we're basically doing what we should have done last year. So Tortola and St. Thomas.
Nice. And you've been there before, right?
Yeah. So
many times
to get back.
We probably did a show on it. And I don't even remember.
I think we did. Yeah.
No one. That's the way I roll, though. I don't remember what's going on these days. So, well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Norwegian. I know it's a cruise line that we don't talk about too much or anything like that, but I like that we've been able to kind of take a week here and kind of look at it from two different aspects, sailing out of Port Canaveral, and then for you guys out of New York. I just think New York would be an iconic sailing. And good luck to your Eagles too.
I think on a roll this year so far. We're looking good, so I'm sure it'll all blow up in a month or two. But we're September champs.
My favorite part about football season is like the NFL will start. It'll be like teams will be 3-0, and people are like, we're going to the Super Bowl, and then there'll be some other team that's like 1-2. It's like, we're done. Yep. And by the end of the season, that 3-0 team finishes like 9-3. I mean 3-9 or whatever.
Yeah. 3-3. We all lose all the rest of their games. So
anyways, all right, Adam. Well, thank you so much for coming back, and all the best as you guys head down to Walt Disney World, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Cheers. Bye. Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Adam for coming on and sharing his and his wife's experiences. They sailed on Norwegian Cruise Line this past fall on the Norwegian Breakaway. And as we talked about at the end, we don't touch on the different cruise lines as much, but when we get an opportunity like to bring these shows to you so you can kind of compare and contrast a little bit, some different opportunities out there for you and your family. And unfortunately for Adam's Eagles, it didn't quite end so well there as the season ended, but they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. And the good thing about sports is there's always next year. So good luck, Adam, next year to your Eagles. As always, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters. They help bring this show to you each and every week ad-free. If you'd like to find out more how you can support our show, you can go to patreon.com/DCL podcast and find out all the information there. Well, the spring breaks are ending, and we've got that dead month of May, and we'll be moving on into the summer. If you are headed out on a Disney cruise, out with Adventures by Disney, headed down to the parks this summer, or going down to Walt Disney World, next week, I think, in the springtime surprise. Myself, Steve, Christy, and Nova, all of us at the DCL Podcast, we want to wish you to be well, enjoy time with family and friends, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.